Hello, welcome to the Civils Post. This is our first lecture video. I am assisted by Mr. Shafi and Mr. Ajay here, who is working with me shooting all these videos. A special thanks to them. Right. Anyways, the first thing we are going to see here is what are civil services. Right, the first video I'm making. To give you a brief understanding, if you are jumped into this exam, you should know what exactly are you doing, what exactly are you aiming for, right? Some people might have that idea, but some people might not. When I entered this exam, I did not know, I just knew I want to be an IAS and this is the exam for IAS. I did not know any other thing about it, what exactly is the bureaucracy, how is it structured compared to other things in the broad structure of administration, how is the bureaucracy structured. I had no idea, right? It took me like at least 4, 5, 6 months to understand what civil services was. Otherwise, I was just learning subjects and whatnot. It is very important that we understand what civil services is and what are we aspiring for. Because when we understand that, right, we will understand how important this exam is and what important roles are we going to take up in this country. Right? It really fuels our motivation and a lot of other things. So the first video I am trying to do here is on what are civil services, what exactly is a civil service, right? And where is it in the country, where is it positioned in the country, right? So going into the lecture. So basically, before I come to a public administration thing, there's a part of a public administration, right? Civil service. So before I come to that, I just want to draw a small parallel, right? So I come from a corporate background, so that's why I want to make this comparison for you to understand it in an easier format. Think about a business, right? Think about a business. Think about I'm from Samsung, so think about Samsung. Samsung wants to make a huge decision to launch another new phone or something like that, something very important. How would that be structured, right? There will be a board of directors which includes shareholders and whom not, or representatives of these shareholders. They would come together, have a discussion and decide that this is the kind of phone we are going to launch as a new thing that was never in our portfolio. It's there, it's new, right? And then this decision is then transferred to someone called CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, right? So the decision comes to him or her. Why? Because he's the executive officer, executive and execution, how they execute things, right? So this entire decision comes there and all resources are also at his dispense, and hence then he understands for a new phone to come out, there should be finance department should be involved for deciding how much money is required for production and all other things, legal departments to understand what are the legalities of launching such a phone, the sales department should be there, a lot of other things, right? So all these would be departments under him or her, right? And he or she would delegate each and everything to each of these departments, and then the entire initiative runs and the phone is out, it is sold, and there's a service department which serves that. If any complaints is there, that would do the service. The entire infrastructure runs. That's how exactly incorporates how administration is done, right? Is done. And the public administration is not very far from that. Though it is a bit more complex and a bit more tedious, because it's a huge thing. Like India is a huge country. Samsung is a small office in Gurgaon or somewhere. The most important decision makers sit there. That's not the case here. We have a huge country with a federal structure, right? So, but in that microcosm that we had seen, the larger picture becomes much more clear, right? Here, as we have a federal structure, I told you, there is a parliament and the legislative assembly. Both are decision-making bodies, right? They pass laws, they pass that this has to be done, that has to be done, right? And then, and they are democratic representatives here, debating, deliberating ideas, and then through that social friction, the best decision for this nation comes out, right? That's the idea here with the parliament and the legislative assembly. First, let's say there is, I'm taking an example here, the universal basic income, that kind of a decision is being deliberated here. Should it be there or not? So a lot of discussions happen, and then what happens is it's decided it should be there, right? So now, so this becomes something like the board of directors in Samsung. Parliament is the board of directors here. They are representatives sitting there, they represent shareholders, here everyone represents citizens of India. So they decide, and that decision comes to the CEO. The CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of the country, is the president. Why? Because Article 53 says so. The executive power of the union lies with the president. On the other hand, in states, it is the governor. Why? The constitution says so. 154, executive power of the states rests with the governor. Right? So, the president, he or she, or the governor, he or she decides decides to execute the decision. Right? This decision that has been made, that will be executed through the president or the governor. Here. I think till that it's clear. Now, let's universal basic income. Now, that's a decision that has been taken. A lot of things has to be adjusted for that decision to go through, right? One, we have to find beneficiaries. This might not be universal in the context of entirely universal. 75% of the population of the country would be considered. So that the panchayat ministry should be there to understand who should be the beneficiaries. The finance ministry should be there. How much should be the cost of this? What is the fiscal burden that we are looking at? All those ministries should be there, right? So the president should allocate these particular sub-jobs within this huge job to each ministry. Clear, right? Universal basic income, it's a huge umbrella. In that, multiple jobs are there. Those jobs have to be allocated to the respective ministries. And he or she will do it. How? Because Article 77, everything is from the Constitution. That is the beauty of public administration. Everything, the base is the Constitution. Article 77, on the base of Article 77, there is allocation of business rules 1961, which allows the president to allocate the jobs that is there to different ministries, right? And every ministry would have a minister. Similarly, the governor also has a similar article at in the state part of the Constitution. I have not written that article here, it should be there, and there also a similar process takes place. Now, every minister gets this, right? Every ministry has its own job to be executed. Now, within ministries, there would be departments, further bifurcation of that job. So, each department, there will be multiple departments in each ministry, and these departments would be associated with whatever job that is coming up. Right? So, departments would have, let's say, from the minister, who is a democratic elected person, the job has come to department. This is where we see the civil service, right? This job has to be executed across the country. The workforces of this entire project becomes the civil servants. So there are civil servants for each department here. There are further civil servants down the line. The entire bureaucracy is under this, right? The entire bureaucracy is created to run this country, the steel machinery of the country, which executed very important sacred decisions from the temple of this country, which is the parliament or the legislative assembly. That decision is carried forward to president, and then it is ramified. It just spreads across the country to the civil servants. In some ways, the development impulses of this country goes through the civil servants of this country. That important is your post. The post that you are aspiring for is that important. This is the amplification of these decisions, right? And how well and how effective these decisions can be implemented is through you. That is why it's so important. And the same thing happens in the governor's space. I have not written the entire structure here. The same thing is replicated here. Since we have a federal structure, we have we have a mirror image here, right? Like a chiral thing, there's a mirror image here, right? But we are not entirely federal. We are not entirely federal, right? So let me just say one more point there. If this is the railway ministry, there will be IRAS, Indian Railway Account Services, Indian Railway Traffic Services, Indian Railway Personnel Services, all those civil servants will be there. If it is the finance ministry, we would have Indian Revenue Service, IT, and Indian Revenue Service, CE under them. So depending on which ministry, the kind of civil servants would be there. That is why in the UPSC exam, right, there are different ranks getting different services. All those services are associated with some or the other ministry. Every service would have a particular ministry associated with them, because the job that is coming to that ministry is executed through those civil servants. So IRS would be finance, IRAS or the railway services would be the Ministry of Railways and other things and other things, right? So that is what, and similarly here also there will be similar civil servants. Now, the issue here is, why I say quasi-federal, is that there's a particular component here called the All India Services. This is basically any legislative assembly work should be done by civil servants recruited by the state, right? Any center's work should be done by civil servants recruited by the center. That's why we have UPSC and SPSC, PSC exams in Kerala or anywhere. They recruit these civil servants. On the other hand, the UPSC recruits these civil servants, right? Both constitutional bodies, Article 312, 350 to 323 are recruited. Now, there is a complication here, which means, which comes from the All India services. These are civil servants recruited by the center through UPSC and sent to the states to work. This is three, which are then the Indian Administrative Service, the Indian Police Service, and the Indian Forest Service, right? So three All India services, that is the what do you say, anomaly in this structure. That is what makes it quasi-federal, right? So these people would come here and implement the decisions of a legislative assembly. That is why always when there is a question of increasing the All India services, resistance from the state is immediate, because they think they are overriding the federal powers of the federalism concept of this country. So that is exactly why All India services are only three. It's very difficult to increase the number of All India services. And why are they important? Because the nation as a whole feels there should be some uniformity in administration across the country. That is why All India Services is there. Even if it is quasi-federal, it brings the uniformity and objectivity to this country's public administration. It's very important henceforth, right? And All India Services, especially All India Services, have a special article 312 in the Constitution, which is specifically for All India Services. Just talking about the Constitution, the civil service of the Union and the state come under Part 14 of the Constitution, services under Union and states, which is from Article 308 to 323. So the job you are aspiring for is mentioned in the Constitution. Can you imagine? You are so important. You are so important for this nation. That is why your job is mentioned in Part 14 of the Constitution, right? All India Service 312 is a specific article for All India Service under paper. And under, between 315 and 323 are UPSC and SPSC, the constitutional bodies who recruit the civil servants of this country. So that is what civil service is. Understand? It is this, again and again, it's a cliche to say this, but it is the steel frame of this country. It is through which all administrative work goes through, right? And civil servants does not mean people who are recruited by UPSC and SPSC. There are other civil servants also who are at a grade, what do you call it, grade B or grade C, right? All those are recruited by other agencies like I think SSC recruits. I'm not exactly sure on those areas, but the civil service is this. This is what you are aspiring to. And hence, it is very, very important that you show extreme motivation and integrity in preparing for this exam. You are aspiring for such important posts of this nation. You are aspiring to make a social change that is driven by the democratic structure of this country. So please understand that and hence move forward, right? This is what civil service is. I hope you understand that, right? I'm just going to summarize few articles here. You do not have to worry about articles right now. Gradually we will learn it. 53, the executive power of the president. 152, the executive power of the governor, through which they both allocate the businesses to the ministries. Then you have 77, which gives them the power to allocate the roles, allocation of business rules 1961. Part 14 of the Constitution creates the civil service, both at union and state, right? And then 312 is a specific article for all India services, which is an anomaly in the structure. I've drawn it like this here, right? Which creates a quasi-federal issue. Then there is 350 to 323, the recruitment agencies, constitutional bodies which recruit us. I hope it is very clear. Thank you.